Let's bring in Dan Bongino, Fox News contributor, former NYPD officer, former Secret Service agent, and author of Spygate, the attempted sabotage of Donald J. Trump. I don't know if you watch any of the Sunday shows, but a lot of Democrats are blaming our administration, the president, for what happened in Texas and Ohio. What's your reaction to that?
You know, Ainsley, it's one of the most disturbing, grotesque trends in politics lately. Just literally hours, if not minutes after an incident, people jump on their Twitter accounts, politicians looking for votes, support, donations, whatever they're looking for. And instead of having some sense of empathy with the victims of this really unthinkable tragedy, your first instinct is to tweet about whose fault it is, other than the actual person who did this. I mean, think about this, right? I was actually in a Walmart this weekend, ran into a whole bunch of people, was talking to them, and on the way out, I'm thinking to myself, what would you do right now if some maniac walked in here with a firearm and started to kill innocent people? And you start to really, as a police officer and a former Secret Service agent, put yourself in that spot. And I can tell you right now, my first instinct afterward would not be to tweet about it, to try to get election votes. And one more thing on this, guys. You know, I don't do this, so I don't speak with forked tongue here. I have a show. I'm on this network as well. We've had incidents where language Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was used by an Antifa terrorist engaged in an attack. We, of course, had the dreadful incident in the baseball field in Virginia. We had another shooting this weekend where one of the shooters had apparently had some support for another Democrat presidential candidate. It's not their fault. Hundreds of millions of people, literally a year across the world, listen to political speech. And you know what they do? They go out and vote. Or they argue with their friends about politics. They don't become savage maniacs and shoot up a Walmart. But Dan, clearly, guys, there's something else going on. There's something else wrong here.
But Dan, in this case, it's universal, to your point. It's not as if one or two of the candidates are pointing the finger at President Trump. All of them are immediately saying it's your fault. How do you overcome that and get at whatever solution would actually exist?
You know, Pete, it requires an educated electorate to realize and see through the fog of what's going on. These are not serious people looking to solve the problem. And here's the issue here, guys. The issue here is when you do that and you suck up airtime dedicated to attacking President Trump, who clearly, by any sane, rational actor, had absolutely nothing to do with this at all. If you're sane and reasonable, you take away a conversation about what the real problem is. There's something going on in our culture. The number of guns is up dramatically. Gun crime and gun crime per capita is actually down dramatically. People have had guns in the United States for hundreds of years since our founding. What is going on in the culture? And instead, you're worried about getting some extra votes in the Iowa caucus coming up? I mean, this is sick stuff. This is really disturbing.
Yeah, speaking of disturbing, so you were at a Walmart down there in Florida. Simultaneously across the state, about 10 miles from Tampa, they got a call at another Walmart where a guy said, I'm on my way over, I'm armed, I'm intrigued by these shootings over the weekend. Cops acted quickly, were able to bust him, unclear if he had a weapon. He felony charges for false report of using a firearm in a violent manner. This is some crazy stuff.
Yeah, you know, when we were doing threat assessments in my prior line of work in the Secret Service, notably directed at protectees, the president, vice president, and others, this copycat phenomenon is a very real thing. I mean, obviously, but we're in a real conundrum here, Stephen. What do? It's news. You obviously have to cover it on these networks. It's devastating news, but it's news nonetheless that people are entitled to hear the details about. But, you know, we can't be ignorant here and pretend it's not a legitimate problem that some other people with severe psychological disturbances and problems beyond our capacity to explain in simple news appearances will find some sick inspiration in this. The copycat effect is very real. I can just give you a quick example. When we would go out in this one particular interview that I conducted with a guy who was making some threats at one of our protectees, had a whole bunch of news files and news clippings, both on his computer and hard copies, of prior incidents like that. Whether he was taking some kind of tactical clues or just something else, they do use it for some kind of inspiration sometimes, not all the time.
Dan, briefly, you said there's a problem in our culture. What is the problem?
I was thinking about this all weekend. Is it? All I have is questions. I mean, I went to graduate school for psychology, but it didn't make me an expert that I have all the answers. Is it social media over social interaction? Is it this disconnect? Is it the breakdown of our family? Does it have something to do with entertainment choices? I think all of these things should be looked at. I think it's only fair. And what are we doing instead? Oh, Bernie did it. Elizabeth did it. Trump did it. No, you know who did it, Pete? The maniac who walked into a Walmart, snuffed out the lives of 20 innocent people shopping on a weekend whose families will never, ever see them again. Can we as a country, please, God, and I'm not using his name in vain, I mean, I put my hands together, can we please just empathize with the victims and the families for a while and find out what happened before we try to score a few extra votes in the Iowa caucus? Please, these were innocent people. This is totally, completely inappropriate.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you, Dan.